Alhamdulillah. So he's going to give us, a nice talk. He's a scholar, and me and him, we spent a lot of time together at school. So Alhamdulillah, we welcome you to Masjid Ibaadillah. Visit your home, sir. Definitely.
So how are you all? Assalamu alaikum. If anybody wants a moment just to stretch, you want to stand up just a moment? You've been sitting for a while, are you comfortable? Okay. It's a deep blessing for me to be here today, and I give thanks to Brother Imam Jihad Saafir for inviting me. The very first time that I met Jihad Saafir, it made a deep impression on me. It was at school, and he was speaking on a panel, and I could see and I could sense that he had deep character, serious yet humorous, strong and yet tender, and a confidence that is built on humility. And you probably see those qualities myself, so it's an honor to be here with you as one of my teachers. So I want to share with all of you today a bit about my faith journey, and in particular how I have learned how to be a better person, how to be a better Christian by the experiences and encounters I've had with Muslims in my life. Because we never know, when we are in front of a group of people, I'm here today as a Christian, the impression that you have of Christians will be formed in part by what I say. And the same is true for each of you as we represent our faith. The impressions that have been made on me by Muslims in my life have been very positive. So I'd like to share a couple of experiences about how I've learned from Muslims about grace, about how to experience the love of God. A second teaching that I've learned from Muslims is about the great commandment to love thy neighbor as thyself and to show hospitality. And a third teaching that I've learned from Muslim in my life is one of the most challenging teachings that comes in Christianity, which is not only to love thy neighbor, but to love thy enemy. And so I'd like to share with you those experiences today. I can still remember when I was in high school, the first time that I was ever hugged by a black man. And we had had a speaker invited to our environmental club to speak about the work that he was doing with hunger and homelessness and working with youth who were involved with gangs. So Imam Abdul-Samad, a tall, strong man with a beard, kind of reminds me of Jihad Saafir, with his prayer cap on, spoke with a deep voice. He came to speak with us about how to address this problem of violence in the community where I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa. Have any of you ever been to Des Moines, Iowa? Familiar with Des Moines? I know Chicago, the Midwest. And he spoke and he said that it's not enough just to do charity when there's poverty in our communities. We must address the causes of the problem. And I was so impressed by what he shared that I asked if I could come to visit the community center that he had, which was in the inner city of Des Moines, where he had members of rival gangs would come together for a safe space, and he would teach them. So one day, a couple weeks later, I decided to go visit, and I have to be honest, I had never been in that neighborhood before. And when I showed up to the community center called Creative Visions, I was the only white person there. And I showed up, and I wasn't sure if I was in the right place, but as soon as I got in the door, a Kale came to greet me. And with those big arms and that smile, he said, "Welcome, assalamu alaikum, welcome my brother, peace be with you." For me, that was an experience of grace. Because grace is love that is not earned. Grace is love that is unconditional. And for me, as a white person walking into that community, I had done nothing to earn respect. I had done nothing to earn trust. And so often the experience is the opposite. That white people have done a lot to earn disrespect, distrust. And to experience that love and that welcome was an experience of grace. I give thanks for that today. I walked in the door. Did any of you see the kind of welcome I got when I walked into the door? Jihad Saafir gave me a hug. And I'll tell you, that experience of grace That is the beginning of the great commandment. To love thy neighbor as thyself is a great commandment. It's the foundation of Judaism, and when we think about it, if the standard for love is to love thy neighbor as we love ourselves, sometimes if the standard is how much we love ourselves, it's kind of a low bar. We have to begin with a deep love. And it may surprise you to hear me say that as a white person who grew up in Des Moines, who was aware of the injustices, who was aware that there was a community within Des Moines that was disadvantaged, where most of the black people lived, and that there was oppression that existed, I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to try to do something. But I actually felt kind of bad about myself when I would go into that situation. When I went into college, I studied more about history. I learned about the history of slavery, the history of this country, of the civil rights struggles. At times, I felt ashamed to be a white person. I felt ashamed for what white people had done. And I had to learn that I could believe in a deeper potential for myself. And that's where that grace is such a profound teaching. So, the second part of that great commandment, to love thy neighbor as thyself, is something that I've experienced at Claremont Lincoln University, Claremont School of Theology. And for those of you who are not familiar with Claremont School of Theology, it's embarking on this kind of radical experiment where we are creating a university where people of multiple faiths come together to study within their own traditions, but also to interact with people of other faiths. So, as a Christian studying to be a Christian pastor, some of my required courses are world religions and interreligious dialogue. So, part of that experience is really founded, the university is founded on the notion of the golden rule. Are any of you familiar with what is the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Right? That's the golden rule. And within the Abrahamic tradition, within Judaism, that's often referred to as love thy neighbor as thyself. But it's so hard to put in practice. Right? At least I find that I often fall short in that teaching. And yet at Claremont University, we are pushed to go outside of our comfort zone and to try and attend services in different locations. So bit by bit, I've learned how to get out of that comfort zone. And when I went to the Islamic Center of Southern California, I went and attended a prayer service, and I shared that I wanted to speak with some of the young men after the service to learn more about their faith and have a dialogue. And they did more than just welcome me to join them on a dialogue. They invited me out to lunch, and the argument that we had at that restaurant was who was going to pay. And I have to confess, I did not win the argument. That is hospitality. That is radical hospitality. That is truly loving your neighbor. And that's something that has been shown to me by Muslims. And I think that that's a challenge for our Christian communities. We need to learn how to reach out. And I want to be clear that as I share today, I'm not here trying to convert anyone. That's not part of my belief. That is part of some Christian beliefs, but as Jihad mentioned, the context is so important. And for me, it's all about being on a journey. And if I may, I wanted to share one of the surahs that inspired me from the Quran. This is something that I had shared with Jihad. It's from Surah number 5, verse 48, where it says, if God so pleased, He would have made you all into one religious community. Therefore, vie with each other and compete in righteousness, so that God may test you by what He has given you. Remember, we will all eventually return to God, and God will determine how we have differed. So that notion to me of how it is that we strive amongst each other in excellence, to me is a vision that's inspiring, right? So that brings me to the final message I'd like to share about one of Christianity's most challenging teachings, right? Jesus was known to say, they would get into these debates about the Great Commandment. That was what they debated back in those days. And he would ask, what is the foundation of our faith? And they would say, well, to love thy neighbor as yourself. And Jesus said, well, that's all fine and good to love your neighbor as yourself, but even the sinners love their neighbors. Even the sinners love members of their family. The true challenge is to go beyond just loving your neighbor and to love thy enemy. When you hear that, it's a difficult teaching, right? And I know that even within my own family, I've heard comments from people, especially recently, in light of the videos that were put out that were insulting to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the response. And I've heard Christians say, why is it that in the Muslim community they're so quick to respond with hate? And I've had to ask myself, how do I respond to my Christian brothers when so often I feel ashamed of how it is that Christians, particularly those who are in positions of power, respond with hatred when they are attacked in some way? It's a deep challenge. How do we respond to this challenge of how to love our enemy? And in my life, in my experience, I've known very few people who actually embody that and can put that into practice. But I'd like to come back and finish by sharing a story about Brother Akeo Abdul-Samad, who I shared, made such an impact on me when I was in high school. A few years after I graduated from high school, I got some tragic news. I learned that one of my high school classmates, named Rodney, had been hanging out with Akeo's only son. Akeo had a son who they called Little Akeo. And one day, my friend Rodney, my classmate, and Little Akeo were hanging out, and Rodney was showing off his father's gun to Little Akeo. They were just playing in the basement, and somehow they didn't know perhaps that it was loaded. An accident occurred, and Rodney shot Little Akeo. And in his shock, he called 911 and confessed. He said, "Oh my gosh, I just shot my friend. Come help him, please." And so in that moment, welcome. In this tragic moment, Akeo Abdul-Samad was faced with this challenge where members of his family were so hurt that they were calling for Rodney to be put behind bars. They were calling for him to serve life in prison. Meanwhile, members of the gangs that were associated with their communities were calling for retaliation. So Akeo, as the imam in this community, as the leader of this community center, was faced with this crisis, and I do not know what were the words, what were the thoughts that went through his mind. I don't know what were the words that he had with Allah as he prayed about what to do in that circumstance. But what I do know is that Akeo came out of that circumstance and he did the only thing that he felt he could do to be true to his faith. He said that he would deliver the funeral and that he would give the eulogy and that it would be public and that they would invite members of both gangs and of both families to come together. And he called for an end to the violence. He embraced Rodney. He said, "The killing must stop with my son." And if a man who is a Muslim, who is an imam, who is a teacher, and who prays to Allah, has the capacity within his heart to forgive the killer of his only son, then that man must be my teacher. That man must be my teacher of Christian compassion and love. So I'm here today with all of you to say that I have much to learn, and you all can be my teachers. And as we go forth and share about our faith, we can be teachers to others in ways that we do not even know. Peace be with all of you.
Do we have any questions? Any questions?
I have not read the whole Quran. But through my classes at Claremont, we've had opportunity to study different portions.
It's in your heart.
It's in my heart. You think I would have much to learn? I'm very open to it. I'm very inspired by the Quran in particular because in the Quran, because it's written in Arabic and in the original language, there's not all these debates that Christians, we don't even know who wrote most of the Bible. We don't know, we don't study it in the language that it was written. And that gives rise to so many viewpoints among Christians that are way off, you know, but I'm inspired to learn more about the Quran. Yes.
Yes, sir. Is the project that you and the working on, is it an ongoing project, pilot project, or
Yeah, I guess you could really say that we're kind of the guinea pigs, in a sense, because we're part of the first class at Claremont where they're bringing together people of different faith traditions to study. And I'm studying in the class, I'm the only Christian in the class with Jihad Saafir. We have a whole group of mostly Muslims in that class, but I'm learning by that experience. And then there are other classes, probably the most common experience that you may have is being in a class where there's mostly Christian students and they're studying ethics or something else like that.
So here's a So you guys can go to the website for Claremont Lincoln University, and what they have, like you said, we're the guinea pigs. You know, they have a master's degree, also a PhD. They have a few programs in this this pilot project, and alhamdulillah, it's a very good program. I've learned a lot, because I'm forced to come out of my comfort zone. We deal with issues. I'm like, they had an article written on the people who are participating in this program. And there's different type of Muslims too. So I'm the conservative, they put me down as the conservative imam, who has all these conservative views, versus there may be, another Muslim who is more liberal, So we're forced to come in and we have dialogue. We had a dialogue, last week about, and it's not an argument thing. Nobody gets mad, because we're in this environment. So the dialogue last week was mixing the prayer lines with men and women, And of course, I'm the conservative now in this view. I'm the conservative. But there's a sister who is more liberal, and I can't say that she's not Muslim. Okay, I can say I don't agree with her view. Because her argument, she wants to mix, women alongside by men, and then, and I, of course, our argument, well, what about, we went over and then, so we go back and forth, but there's a saying that, the person, ignorance causes a person to be restricted, and when they meet disagreement, they become combative. This is ignorance. But the person, when a person's knowledge expands, they look at it, oh, this is another view. But you still can be my friend. It's all good, The person, who's restricted, who's ignorant, who only has one view of things, they're ready to fight when somebody disagrees with them, okay? So, it's for us, it's a training ground. Me and him, we have a class, together, and we're actually... matter of fact, he probably has an A on this assignment. This is probably an A+. He did an excellent. Everybody like his speech? Yeah. That was excellent. Very much. So he's gonna present that. That's for his assignment, and he probably has an A from the stuff that we've been talking about in the class. So, alhamdulillah, it's been a benefit. We've had a lot of dialogue, and we're not restricted in our view. We realize that there's many points of view.
I've never been a big fan of grades, so regardless of what sort of grading there would be, the real test is when we go out into the world. That's true for our faith. We're here with teachings, we're here sharing, but when we go out into the world, that's when we're truly graded, right? Yeah. And I think that one of the things that's beautiful about Claremont Lincoln is so often religion is a source of strife between peoples, and when we don't practice how to relate and how to respect and how to learn, then it comes out in the world in ways that are hurtful. So we're trying to study and practice at Claremont Lincoln how to exist with this concept of the golden rule and to put it into practice in our lives. So I'm grateful for the chance to be here today.
Yes.